Welcome to today's Creativity Summit. I have the pleasure of getting to speak with Kimberly Wilson this morning. So Kimberly is the author of 6 books, a psychotherapist in private practice, a designer of the locally sewn, eco-friendly Tranquility clothing line, and I'm even wearing one of her shirts. She also serves as the president of Pigs and Pugs Project, with a mission to make the lives of pigs and pugs happier. You can find her sipping fragrant green tea in pink ballet slippers, practicing dégagés and demi-pliés, or leading retreats around the world. She has a master's degree in women's studies and social work, and her work has been featured in News and World Report, Washingtonian, Fast Company, and Bella Grace. She lives in Washington, D.C. with a rescue kitty, 3 rescue pugs, one great human. Indulge in tranquilosophy via her blog and podcast, Tranquility du Jour, and online courses. Kimberly Wilson, I am so lucky to get to talk to you today. Thank you for being a part of this summit.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And before we really dive into things, I just want to tell everyone how wonderful I think you are. You have set the stage, so to speak. You've been kind of that wonderful mentor slash shiro that I've looked up to in the business world for years, who I've thought you're the gold standard. Oh. And so it's such a treat. I'm not even sure this audience knows yet what a treat they are in for today. So thank you for being you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
How far do we go back? I'm thinking a decade?
I read your book when it came out, your first book when it came out. And I think I started following along on the podcast. And then maybe 5 or 6 years ago was the first time I got to go on one of your retreats. It was one of the retreats in the woods.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that was the first time we met in person. So.
Okay. Yeah. Well, then if it goes back to the first book, then that's been 13 years. So that's amazing.
I've been following you for a while.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and I still think on all of the Yoke and Abundance, my favorite reading list, your book is top of the list.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so everybody needs to go get Hip Tranquil Chick, Yoga Chick. But so, you have a huge creative journey. Can you talk a little bit about what creativity means to you, and then we'll get into how you infuse it in your life?
Sure. So creativity to me is really everything we do, I think, can be infused with creativity. Whether or not it's the lipstick you put on in the morning, the tea that you drink, the way you sign off your emails, what you write with, how you dress. It's everything can be really an infusion of creativity. And I think for so many people can feel I need to be a painter, or I, need to be something more in the traditional artistic form. But what I love to remind people is we're all creative, and how do we tap into that? And again, it can be with really small touches. I have this jar of washi tape, right? So I love to put washi tape on freaking everything. And so that's another piece of creative touch and creative flair. So honestly, I feel everything that we do can be a form of creativity.
Mm-hmm. And, I see it in the way you've written your books. I see it in the way I got to visit your yoga studio before you sold it. That was a highlight. And just everything that you've done, the way you bring together your work in the nonprofit world, where you infuse your love of animals, pigs and pugs especially, but even cats, into what you do. You bring such a creative flair. Do you have tips for people on how they can do that?
Yeah. You know what I think it comes down to is really getting in touch with what you like. I think for so many people can be oh, I need to grow out of pink, or, whatever it is. Or it's that's what I liked when I was younger, which is fine, right? We do grow and evolve, but I think it can be helpful to tap into what is it that when you see something, or you listen to something, or you taste something, you just light up. And how can that be infused in your work? So just an example for me is I'm a big tea drinker. I love tea. So, for me, one of my creative touches and a lot of my photos and things along those lines and a lot of things I push is like tea, so it's, and that's just like you're drinking a libation. So thinking about, from what you consume food wise to, of course, what you drink, to what you wear, to how you talk, all these pieces I think can be a way to infuse your creative flair. And sometimes it can be hard to tap into what is my creative flair because we've become so regimented on what is acceptable and what isn't. And I encourage listeners to think about, all right, if I were to step back and not be doing or wearing or speaking or eating or drinking what I think I should be, what would it be? Would I be a raw foodie? Would I be, decorating in pink? Would I be decorating in or like wearing a lot of color? It's I think it's just helpful to keep in mind, what is it that lights you up? And how can you bring that forth in the way in which you show up in the world?
Right. And I love that. Like, you've named your house, right? The Pink Palace. And that, because of that, I've named my home, and mine's the Buddha Bungalow. And I love like thinking about themes and, like, okay, what's the theme of this thing that I'm doing today? And that can be a really fun way to get into, to creatively play.
Yes, absolutely.
But I'm also curious, so you do so much, right? You do yoga, you bring the tranquil philosophy into everything that you do. How did you get into clothing?
Yeah, so tranquility, which is turning, I always have to do the math. It's kind of like with age when you're like, how old am I? So I do this with the business too. So I started it in '02. So, right. So it's 17 years old. And at that time, this was kind of before leggings had kind of come back into style as being a thing. And, I was finding that I was going down to teach. This is like the studio was just growing. And so I was still kind of teaching around town. And I was going down to places like the World Bank to teach or, different like dance studios, places around town where I was commuting per se. And I just noticed like walking around downtown when everyone's in business suits and I'm like in workout wear. Again, this is kind of before workout wear was cool to wear outside.
That was not the thing.
When people had yoga pants, but they didn't do yoga. It was just one of those things where I thought, how can I actually have a clothing line where I can wear something to do yoga in and then actually walk around and no one knows like, oh, she's in her workout gear.
Right.
And so, yeah, that was the evolution, but it started with just t-shirts, which is why it's called Tranquility without a Y at the end, which always stumps people. You got it right.
I love it.
It's like a little too creative for people to really get. People are like, Tranquilit? It's like, no, Tranquility without a Y. What does that mean? How do you spell it? Anyway, if I could go back and rebrand, go back to that 2002 self, I would. But so it started with t-shirts and, that were branded like Tranquil Space, and then yoga pants, right? Because that way when people showed up at the studio, which at that point was in a church parlor, and they were in their clothing from work and they were like, oh, I forgot to pack my pants, like they could pick some up. And then over the years, it's evolved into more of like a lifestyle line where it's things that like you can wear as you're doing today, that you can wear for various things, right? From dates to seeing clients to work for a lot of people, and it's just comfy and it's chic and it's flowy.
Versatile.
So versatile. Back whenever I was in my early 20s, I remember being obsessed with Donna Karen's, I forget what she called it, but it was like something like the 7 staples, right? And this idea of like, how do I have just a few pieces, but I can mix and match them and wear them with everything, dress them up, dress them down. And so that's really where the clothing line came out of. And then we just use organic bamboo, organic cotton fabrics, and then it's sewn here in Washington, D.C. And I've worked with the same seamstress now for 12 years maybe. So yeah.
Yeah, and I have my favorites, and it's probably time for me to get some new Plazo pants. I need to retire the ones that I've had for like almost 6 years. And those might need to be repurposed in some way. uh, but the thing that really speaks to me about your work across all of it is how you infuse your own style, your creative flair to everything you do. It's like someone can even just look at the house behind you and really get an idea of who you are and what you're about. And how do you think surrounding yourself in those extra flares helps you keep your creative fires going? And do you think it helps you keep your creative fires going?
Absolutely. Because you know what? Whenever I come home, like I'm just happy to be home, right? I'm happy to have surrounded by candles, pugs, flowers and plants and twinkle lights and books. I probably already said books because it's like books, 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 books.
And
I
more
have
books.
and more books, right? Even like you see up there, it was like, we're like, okay, there is no more space for books. And I have these built-ins right here. And then you can probably see it. Well, I guess you can't really see it on the other
You
side.
can see them, yeah.
Big book and or built-ins next to the fireplace. And it's like, they were piling up on the floor. So Tim, my partner, like built those. And so we're just like, okay, well, let's just go up with it. So I need to trim back on that. But the reason I even say that is, whenever I come into my space, it feels like me. Same thing with my therapy office. I've set it up. It's not quite as, like it's a lot more zen-y, more
Right.
spacious, right? I still have like a chandelier. I've got faux fur. I have soft pink hues. I have like little crystals and, oh, of course, books, but it's these plush sort of just touches that I think really can make things your own. Because even I remember I was a paralegal, a trademark paralegal for a couple years early in my career. And so I had my own little office, which was so exciting. It's like the size of a closet, but I loved kind of making it my own, with like a big framed image of an impressionist painting and then like a pansy throw over the extra chair. And, it's just like, sometimes you're like, okay, even if you're in a conservative environment, how can you personalize it and make it your own? And I think what gets hard for people, Alicia, is that it's almost like, well, I don't know what my own is.
Right.
And so, the cool thing about it is there's things like Pinterest, there's all sorts of quizzes, like what's my style from clothing to decor, which sometimes that can be helpful because we've lost touch maybe of what it is that makes us uniquely us. And how do we get back into that and then incorporate it into our decor, into our style, into the way we entertain, the whole shebang.
Yeah. I love creative flair, and it is honestly because of reading your work and seeing the way that you've done things that I've really been able to develop my own style and my own kind of creative flair, so to speak. Like finding my style, I'm like, I've decided that I'm boho Parisian. That's like
Yeah.
kind of my, like part hippie, part wild child, part chic Parisian.
Yeah.
So and being able to, like, once you figure that out, like once you figure out what your style is, like those things, like you said, like coming home to my plants or, coming home to that sacred space that I can sit down and write in, it just helps me get into that mindset of where I want to be creatively.
Totally. And I think it makes a big difference. I mean, really setting up your space. And some people may be like, I have 10 kids and a husband who loves clutter and and I don't know what to do. And so, what I always encourage people who struggle with this, because my partner, God bless him, but he lives in this with me. And it's like, I don't even let him put books on my shelves. I'm like, no boy books. He has to have his books next to like the bed on his little thing. But, listeners, just, he has his own little space, he's got a cabin in the woods and there he can put his boy books. But, you have to be really protective of your space, maybe not to the degree I am. I'm not proud of that. But, it could even just be like a little basket that is yours. You have a little nook. I mean, I know of women who have turned a small closet into their sacred space office. And that's where they go and they're like, mommy is not to be disturbed here. And that's where they write or do things that just kind of allows them to set up their little boho Parisian or boho chic or, twinkle lights galore, whatever it might be. Pink palettes, right? But, on your own terms and with what works for you. Because again, you may not be able to, turn your whole family's world into something that is like 100% you.
Absolutely. What do you feel like are your maybe top 3 tips for really accessing your creative spirit to help you get in touch with your inner wise woman?
Mm, okay. Top 3 tips. So I would say the first thing is to get clear on who you are, right? Now,
Mhm.
this I think is an ongoing search, ladies and gentlemen. So it is not at all like this is an ever an ending process. But
An
I think
evolution.
really, huh?
An evolution.
It is an evolution, an ongoing evolution. I mean, like, right? We look at, I love now, older women are so kind of revered as like style icons, right? Like Iris. And if you guys have not seen the movie Iris, see it.
I love that
This is
movie.
like, a woman in her late 90s who people are freaking crazy about. So, I think it's like getting clear on who you are and being open to the fact that it is constantly evolving. Okay. So I think that is one of the first pieces. I think second is allowing yourself to play. So, you know, we have so many responsibilities. We are wearing the mom hat, whether or not you're like a mom to a human, you may be a mom to a fur baby, to plants. Now people talk about their plant babies, right? So you're a mom to something in some way, probably. And, you've got your kind of daughter hat, your sister hat, your partner hat, your friend hat. I mean, all these different hats. And so we have to be like responsible and on top of things. What would it be like to let this part of you kind of come out and play? Get your hands dirty in dirt and like repot plants or garden or, go and volunteer at a local animal shelter. And, it's like, what would allow you just to really kind of play in a way that feels uniquely you? I mean, I'll say one of the ways I've been able to do this that's been really fun over the past couple of years is returning to ballet, which was mentioned in my bio. So for years, 20 years, I've been a yogi, right? I've been like super into yoga. And as a little girl, I loved ballet. And so going back to that process and playing, because frankly, like my skills, you think it's like riding a bike. It's not like riding a bike. But, that has been so nourishing for my soul. I mean, I love the outfits, all black, little splashes of pink. I love feeling so feminine and like twirling and, the bar work and the piano. We have a live pianist. I mean,
Oh my goodness.
all these pieces, right, are just that is playful to me. So thinking about it for you with these different hats, what would allow you to play and nourish this kind of inner creative spark? So then I would say number 3. So after you get in touch with who you are, you let yourself play. Then the third thing is to maintain a practice of
Yes.
creativity, right? Because it's one thing, it's like, oh, I go to ballet, right? Okay, so that happens like once a week or twice a week. All right, well, what else? What else are you doing that allows you to come out to play regularly? And again, this is a silly example, but I am just going to say this once more. Washi tape,
I love
right?
washi tape.
I know. It's like, I mean, it's so silly, but this to me is playful. I use it in my planner. I use it whenever I send snail mail. I'm a big snail mail girl. I always have these on my desk, right? So that I am writing with, color. I find that really helpful and playful. I mean, perfume, I find really helpful and playful. So you may be like, well, that's not a creative practice. Actually, it is.
Great.
Getting ready in the morning, the way in which you sign off your love notes. Hopefully, you still send snail mail. It's such a treat. All these things I think really are ways to practice and nourish this. Even trying a new recipe in the kitchen or adding pineapple to your green smoothie when you usually do mango. I mean,
Yes.
again, small examples, but it just shows that we want to maintain this. It's not a part of us that comes out to play like once a week.
Yeah, I love that idea. And even, it can be really, really small things, right? It doesn't have to be something that takes all day. However, I would like to challenge people to like once a quarter or twice a year even finds, and hopefully it's not only those times, but find something that feels like play and give it your day. Like
Yeah.
I made an apple pie from scratch last weekend. It took all day, because you can't rush that process of the dough. You have to work with the dough. You can't work it too much. It has to sit in the refrigerator for a couple hours, and then it has to come back out. It has to come to room temperature. You can't force the rolling it out piece of it. It literally, making a pie, if you're going to do it right from scratch, takes all day. And that was play for me. That was total giving over to, I was on social media a bit, but I was not checking my email. I was not working. So if
Yeah.
you can find something that feels like play, and maybe it's being out in the garden, whatever it is, see if you can give it your whole day. Every once in a while, not all the time, because I'm all about infusing just the small everyday rituals with creativity and play. But thank you for those tips, Kimberly. So
Well, Alicia, and one thing, I love what you just said, because yeah, definitely give yourself a freaking day here and there, right? Even if it's like in a couple of weeks, there's a day long at the Washington Ballet where, we're going to do all sorts of things like strengthening foot and ankle. So to me, that's going to be a day of play, right? But
yes.
sometimes too, as you've been on 2 retreats with me,
Yeah, I know. And I can't wait to do another.
that like, right, going away for weekends or going away for a week long where you are nourishing that creative part of you is so important, because we as women, and as we get older as adults, we're like, play slay, right? It's like, no, this stuff is so important to nourish who we are. And so I think also taking it even a little further from a day and into kind of extended periods of time where you go on journeys that allow you to really focus on a creative practice.
Yeah,
So helpful.
they're life changing. I
Yeah.
mean, I think it was your retreat in Paris, your writing retreat, where I said, I I knew it, but it brought it so front and center how out of alignment I was with where I wanted to be. And so being able to really get out of your normal routine
Mm-hmm.
and view your life from a bird's eye view
Yes,
can help you come back into alignment with what's most important to
absolutely.
you.
So important.
If we don't get out of that, we can't see it.
Right. And I know some listeners may be like, there's no way I could ever get away. How do I do this? And I would just encourage you at home, carve out little mini retreats for yourself, like a morning here, an afternoon there. And because you may not have a week to go to Paris or Provence, but how can you get like a similar sort of it while also dealing with like all of your other responsibilities? Because sometimes people can't step away, but you can do a home retreat.
Yeah.
There's lots of resources for that
And
online.
you do home retreats too. So you do
Yeah.
online retreats. So I follow Kimberly because you want to know what she's doing. You want to take her classes. You want to do her quarterly check-ins. You definitely want to be a part of that.
Thank you.
Kimberly, I think you have a gift for everyone, right?
Oh, yes. Yes. So, one thing that I thought would be really helpful is I wrote this book in January. Let me just show it to you. Year of Tranquility, a lifestyle planner. And one of the chapters, of course, I think it's like chapter 3 because it's such an important piece to me, is creativity. And so what I wanted to do is gift you guys the creativity chapter and then the 4 following practices as a downloadable PDF. And again, it's just a really fun, playful book. You may even recognize this is behind me. And the idea behind it is, okay, how do we incorporate creativity more into our lives? And I've got great tips and tools in there for you. Again, free, and you'll find that at kimberlywilson.com/creativity summit.
Awesome. Well, Kimberly, thank you so much for being a part of this summit. We really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.